Hi, this is part 2 of the argumentative fallacies lecture. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, go back and look for it. You'll need to see it before you continue with this, otherwise the next 9 slides won't make any sense, alright? Alright, so here we go, continuing. We've done the first 9 in part 1. This is part 2 for argumentative fallacies numbers 10 through 19. Alright, number 10 here is a straw man fallacy. In a straw man fallacy, this fallacy oversimplifies an opponent's viewpoint and then attacks that hollow argument. So it's basically like saying, my opponent says this, and then mischaracterizing what your opponent says in order to make it look so bad that you can just defeat it right away. Take a look at this. People who don't support increasing the state minimum wage hate the poor. All right? So that's an example of someone who maybe supports increasing the state minimum wage is talking about their opposition, and their opposition may have many arguments such as the effect on taxes and the economy, so on and so forth, but none of those arguments are here. The only thing this person has done is said, my opposition hates the poor, and that's mischaracterizing the opposition. Alright, or this, people who don't support Obama's new immigration policy are racists. So there's another example. Here we have the opposition just completely discounted as racist without looking at the merits of their argument. It's not logical and it's not fair. The best thing you can do is take a look at your opposition's argument and counter it logically with facts and evidence and analysis. Alright? Number 11 is a veiled threat. A veiled threat is a statement that suggests something bad will happen if the audience does not accept the argument. So here's an example, and we see this a lot in the popular culture. Here's just an example. If the city does not increase funding for the fire department, there will be no way firefighters can meet all of the city's needs. So implicit in that message is, if you don't give us more money, your city is going to burn to the ground, right? So it's a veiled threat. And it doesn't work logically because there's no evidence to show that firefighters need more money to do the job they're doing right now. Now, I'm not against giving firefighters money, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that this argument does not show the need for more money. All right. Number 12 is a non-sequitur. A non-sequitur or non-sequitur arguments assume a connection between a premise and a conclusion where there is no such connection. So here's an example. We have sent a man to the moon, so we should be able to cure HIV. Now that's a great example. Some of you may have said something like this before, but you can see that sending a man to the moon has nothing to do with curing HIV, right? So I can build a rocket, I can point it at somebody with HIV, that rocket is going to have no effect on the disease, right? Because they're unrelated. And success in one area, such as rocket science, has no relation to success in another, okay? The next one we're looking at is called a red herring. You can think of a red herring as a distractor. That is, a red herring is using an unrelated argument to attract attention away from the real argument. In this example, somebody's trying to avoid talking about the level of mercury in seafood. And so they say the level of mercury in seafood may be unsafe. But what will fishermen do to support their families, right? So it changes the topic, distracts everybody over here while making a totally different argument and not responding to the original one. That's a red herring. Number 14 is a post hoc fallacy. Now the full name is post hoc ergo propter hoc, and that assumes that if B happened after A must have caused B. So here's an example. The Ridge Creek Bridge was built right before the last earthquake. If we rebuild it, there may be another earthquake, right? So this assumes if there's like a time relationship, that there's a causal relationship, when in fact there may be no relationship at all, other than one thing happened before another. Number 15 is begging the question. In begging the question, you avoid the real question or presume that the argument at hand has already been proven true when it has not. This is the example. Filthy and polluting coal should be banned. Now, you might agree that coal should be banned. That's not the point here. It's saying right away in the argument that coal is filthy and polluting. It does not offer any evidence. It doesn't give us any facts, any analysis to back up that statement. It just assumes you will agree right in the argument. And that's dangerous because you kind of do. You're like, oh, okay, without even seeing the evidence. So always remember to ask for the evidence when somebody gives you such a statement. Number 16 is the either-or fallacy. An either-or fallacy falsely presents two alternatives as if they were the only two alternatives. So here's an example, and here's another example. Now, I'm not against giving teachers more money, right? But we hear this argument a lot, and it really doesn't make sense. It says, if we don't increase school funding, our students won't get a good education. See, that one's funny. Because there's no relationship between increasing school funding and the level of education our students get. You think there would be, right? It seems to make sense on the surface, but in practice we know it doesn't. How would giving a teacher who's teaching poorly more money make them a better teacher, right? They would just get more money for the job they're doing. Now something like training or more practice might improve that teacher, but simply just giving that teacher more money doesn't make sense. And the statistics bear that out. We've been increasing school funding since the 1970s with no, well, I don't know about that, but not necessarily having the education system all of us would want, right? So again, another argumentative fallacy where we need to see the evidence. We need to see the evidence before we accept the claim. All right, number 17, equivocation. Equivocation is using a term in a different way than an opponent in order to deflect an argument. So I like this example. Imagine a student in my class asks me, Professor Kramer, can you define equivocate? And let's say I just don't know what it means, right? But I don't want the class to see that I don't know what it means. So I might say, now what do you mean by define? And then we could spend the rest of class talking about the definition of define. And then the bell would ring, students would be dismissed, and I could safely go look up the definition of equivocate. And the students would never know I didn't know the answer. So that's equivocation. It's using a definition or deflecting or changing the word in order to deflect an argument. Number 18, hasty generalization. This is a conclusion without sufficient evidence. Here's an example. Of course our students are getting a good education. Our school won the academic decathlon last year. Now this might take a little background. In California, at least, the academic decathlon teams in high schools, they could be in a high school of 4,000 students, and yet the team would only be something like 20 students. So even though those 20 students are getting a great education, that doesn't say anything about the other 3,880 students in the school, right? Okay, and our last one today, false analogy. A false analogy occurs when the writer presents two ideas as if they were related, when in fact they are not. Here's an example. Any war we make in the Middle East will turn out just like Vietnam. So another thing, you may have said something like this in the past, but remember you can't make such a statement without evidence, without showing and listing the similarities and showing and listing where you would draw that conclusion. All right, and again, we can't see into the future, so it's another one of those fallacies that pretends to see the future when in fact it doesn't. Okay, everyone, so that's just 19 argumentative fallacies. If you want to see more on this, take a look at the examples below on this page, and we've got some videos, some other ways of looking at argumentative fallacies, some comics that might give you a more fuller idea of what fallacies are. I've also linked a full list of 160 argumentative fallacies, so you can see all of them if you wish. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a great day.